All right, welcome everyone to our Wednesday Ask a Recruiter event. I am here with Daniela Sharma. She's one of our scientific recruiters, and I am Karina. I am the co-founder of Collaboratory. We are going to talk today about networking, which is everyone's absolute least favorite topic. You speak to 10 people about their job search, and 9 of them will say the networking is the thing that they really dread. And it's interesting because as we're bringing people into the Collaboratory community, they often cite that they don't want to have to network as part of their job search. And that is fair. It sucks. Nobody likes it. I can say though that you get better at it over time, and you can develop some tactics to make it easier, more fun. And I will also share that as you do go to more and more events, you actually get to have friends there, and you start to recognize them. So this is something that Alison normally hosts these, I know, but she is not, because she was actually out late at a networking event last night, and she's getting caught up for some other things we're doing today. So I said I'd host. But what she said is that it's kind of fun, as she's been going to more and more after the pandemic, because now she has people she looks forward to seeing, and they're at the same networking events, and she gets, a mix of people. Some will go to this one or that one, but it's not so painful because you're not the odd person out anymore. But that takes time, right? So how do we get there? What's the kind of first step here? So we're going to dive into that a little bit today. But first, Daniela, can you tell us just a little bit about, your point of view on what the power of networking really is for people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, Karina, you and I both, come from the introverted side of the spectrum. So maybe a little bit giving people a little bit of, lead in terms of that, anybody can be successful at it, or at least feel comfortable and look forward to it.
So true.
Yeah. And I want to also say that networking is not as it's portrayed perhaps in movies or TV, or perhaps you may have heard people from years past. It sort of has I hate to say it, but almost like a sleazy connotation.
Yeah.
Really, one-sided, like I'm getting something from someone, or I have to get something from someone. And it's really more of like a two-way or a community kind of event where this is really going to not help you, and you're going to be nurturing these connections. You'll start out slow, especially when you're just starting out, maybe 1 or 2 connections. But as you start to engage, and we'll talk about, different ways to engage and build your network, you're going to find that it becomes almost natural, that you look forward to reaching out. And, the power of the first, second, and third connections, I'm using the LinkedIn terminology, really becomes exponential. So I really like, people to think about that as well. I guess to start out is really to think about what, as you're thinking about building your network and just, for professional development, what would you like to get out of networking? Understand your own goals, and these can change over time. They don't have to, be set in stone. It depends on where you are in your career, or just where you are, in your professional development. Are you looking for job opportunities? And this is what we work with, mostly. On top of that, but perhaps you're seeking for some advice. Perhaps that you're looking to pivot into a different industry. That's a different kind of job search, and where networking can really, shine a light and really help you there. Are you just trying to learn more about, your industry, maybe the latest job opportunities, or career development paths, or maybe new technologies? Are you just trying to expand your network because you are looking to perhaps move into a new, geographical area? That's also an important consideration. In I guess in summary is to really have some idea of what you'd like to get, in terms of, get out of networking, the goals of networking. And one of the first things you can do, and this is good for, introverts like me, is you can do a lot of this by building your presence online. Have that strong LinkedIn profile, have a strong brand, so to speak, in which, people can go and review your experience, your career, your skill set, your interests, and immediately see, where there's areas to connect. Along with that, make sure you have your resume, well crafted and ready in case people do want to connect and make an exchange, let's say, exchange of information.
Let's
Uh,
follow that thread a little bit there.
no,
So, when you're talking about the goals of networking, so you were talking about, multiple different use cases for networking and having sort of a resume always in your back pocket. Now, if you're not on the job market, but you're networking so that you're not starting from scratch, I always say to do this, never let the networking drop off because you never know when you're going to be on the job market and you never know when you're going to want to be. Right. So there may be a point when you say it is time for a change. And I am glad I've been cultivating this network because now I have people to go to. So with your resume, though, are you also kind of keeping that updated in the background for maybe not job reasons, but personal reasons, just so that people can learn more about you?
absolutely. And I think it really does go hand in hand with your online presence, LinkedIn in particular. It's also really a really good exercise just professionally anyway. I know it's probably one of the last things you're thinking about when you are happy in your position, but having that updated resume, and especially after you complete a particular project, or perhaps the company underwent some reorganization and you're maybe in a different functional group. These are good triggers in a sense to help you remember, but this should be maybe every couple of months. We say 6 months, and thinking, long term, but there should be some regularity in which you go back to your resume and update it,
Yeah.
because it
So,
helps with your memory. Yeah, and also so that you can be prepared when those eventualities come up.
and I think it's a really good point too, as you're making these updates to your LinkedIn profile, just make them to the resume at the same time, right? And kind of triggers your brain. But the LinkedIn algorithm rewards a lot of changes on the platform. And so you continue to show up high in the search on our end, on the recruiter side. If you're making small changes to your profile, it's signaling to LinkedIn that you're active, you're there, you're maybe possibly on the market, even if you're not open to work. So I definitely recommend every 3 months on LinkedIn. So a little bit faster cadence than the resume because you get to send that resume out on your own terms, but LinkedIn's always there. So
Yeah.
that's a key one. What about like having a personal website or like a portfolio or something? When would you want to have that?
Yeah, it's some people already have a sort of like a personal website via perhaps their lab, or their group at their company, and but definitely something that it helps you craft a brand for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure what that means, there are a lot of templates and ways to and also platforms to create a personal website. And this is also good to provide a portfolio. I know for some industries, a lot of creative industries, a portfolio just goes hands in hand, along with your resume. But this could be a portfolio of projects that you've accomplished, and this is something that I would say, like, I'll pick on LinkedIn a little bit, but this is a section where a lot of people do highlight projects they've worked on and accomplished. And I can say, as a recruiter, I definitely am looking at those. Those projects and what people have accomplished as something of interest. So this personal website can be a source of not just providing your brand, but put a sort of portfolio of accomplishments as well.
I love that. Yeah. And so, pro tip for LinkedIn, if you're looking, where do I put this? If you put your profile into creator mode, you can then add a link to the top of your profile, and that can be a link to anything you want, including a portfolio or a website or your research gate. I see that a lot with people. If we get these resumes in sometimes and they have, 50 publications. That's not the place to put your 50 publications. It's a place to put the top 3 that relate to the job you're applying for, and then a link to your research gate or your website if you have one. So that's really, really key. Okay, excellent. So let's talk about when you would go to events. How are you finding these events? What types of events? Are they all online? Are there some in person? What are we seeing these days?
All of the above, Karina. um, so sometimes I say it's good news for people who may feel a little out of practice or may not be sure to, like, do I want to jump in? A little social anxiety, may not want to jump into an in-person event. There's a lot of online events as well. But one of the first things I would say is, like, if you're starting your career, you're leaving you're leaving your academic training, you're starting your career. Many colleges, many universities have a very strong, not only career services, but an alumni network, and they have specific programs to leverage the alumni network for people who are looking to not just get a job, but also to explore careers, professional development. So if you and as an alumni, and I get contacted for this, but I use it myself, and I'm going to date myself here. I've been, out of college for many many years. I still use the alumni network.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, for well, expanding if I have new interests, or if I can help someone with their own networking. But I would say lean heavily on the alumni network or the alumni services that you're related to. And not for nothing, this is also a great way to reach out to people on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, you went to this school I did," and
Mhm.
reminisce a bit, and then see where the opportunities for networking and professional development go from there.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. The alumni networks are different at different schools. So if you don't have a great one at your school, don't despair. There are other ways to network. My undergrad had a great alumni network, and I know yours did too. I don't know if that's something to do with the kind of the Aggie schools or or what, but we definitely we both have an animal science background, so a little random. But yes, awesome place to go. And you can also often join those networks in LinkedIn. And that's a great, there's actually, you can search by school within LinkedIn, even on the basic plan. When you go into that top search bar, one of the options you can choose, if you go to see all the options you can search by is school. So you can also go and see what your former classmates, whether they were in your class or not. As Daniela said, it does not matter when they graduate. You're still sort of family, right? You still went to that school. And so if you see somebody in a really cool job and you want to network with them, I'd say reach out and yeah, strike that little chord of yeah, we went to school together, or we went to the same school if it was a different year, and see if they'll join your network. I love it.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna follow up what you said, also using LinkedIn. People join groups in LinkedIn,
Oh yeah.
or they follow certain people or organizations. If you're not sure where to start, and perhaps the alumni network for whatever reason is not panning out for you, why not use the groups in LinkedIn? They have there's a searchable function, and you can find the ones that are of interest to you. I am a member of a number of them. I love collecting groups that way, and reaching out to people. So these are just some easier ways. If you're not sure where to start, use these groups. And not only that, um, you can join professional organizations, and professional organizations have membership lists. They have events on their own. Sometimes they're formal conferences, but they're also specific networking events. And certain geographical regions have their own networking events. So the Boston Cambridge area, area that we're very familiar with, has a number of sometimes just happy hours or low key, low cost events where you can join, and for very little time investment, at least start meeting other people or just seeing who is there. And it doesn't take a lot of investment of time or energy to do that. They make it easy for people who are busy, who are looking. And these are great ways to again just start slow, and start simple to build your network.
I love that. I'd say that's where the magic is when you start to think about getting comfortable with networking. Because if you're going to events that are maybe in a series or with a group, a professional group, you will run into the same people over and over. And so while your first few events might be a little bit awkward and you're sort of making friends and seeing how you can weasel your way into these groups, once you've gotten over that hump, you'll start to look forward to them because you know you're going to see some folks that you like and you see all the time there. And my pro tip there is if it's with a professional organization, they're always looking for volunteers to run different things. So I remember a long time ago, I joined Women in Bio, and pretty much the very first event, they roped me into being a chairperson of a committee, which was great because it actually gave me such a good excuse to go to people for things. And it wasn't awkward at all because, oh, I was a committee chair acting in the stead that I needed to. So I needed to gather volunteers. I needed to find a venue, whatever it was. And it made it so much less awkward. So that's my pro tip is, if you want, Women in Bio is a fantastic one. There's a lot of women focused events. I do notice that we hear more complaints from the women than the men about networking. And that just maybe gender oriented, but it may also just be that, it's harder for us to get out and network sometimes.
Very true. Very true. I think there's also a little bit of social learning where we're told not to put ourselves out there. So it
Mm,
took a lot, at least for me, and perhaps I will say my generation, if I
yeah,
can say that that was a significant barrier. Let's say.
interesting.
Yeah, and I'd love to follow up. Karina, you're giving me wonderful segues today. I was going to say I was going to follow up with volunteering in general,
Yeah.
with maybe certain areas you're passionate about, certain interests. A lot of nonprofit or aligned organizations are always looking for volunteers. As Karina
Mm,
said, she didn't mean to, but it sort of happened. But if you can also reach out, your own volunteer organizations. Again, it's about building your network. And sometimes you're not sure, or you won't be able to see where the connections arise,
mhm.
for career development. I'll give a really quick example. This past weekend, I went to a cubing competition. My son is very into Rubik's cubing. I met a couple of people, networked. Network basically is, introducing yourself, what are your interests, and somebody who worked in pharma.
Oh,
And the New York area, I would never have known. So you never know when it's going to come to that way, but being prepared, to exchange information. But it's following a passionate area. Well, in this case, my son's passionate area,
mhm.
led to some great connections.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's really the key is if you go into these events without a real agenda, you have some goals, and your goals, like you mentioned earlier, are to meet interesting people. And if you are not agenda driven, but you're maybe come from even a place of service when you're meeting people, how can I, if you listen with an ear to, how could I help this person? How could I connect them with somebody that would be influential to them or help them with their career? People love helping each other. You get a lot of this personal satisfaction from it. There's been shown to increase happiness just to help people, right? So you do get something out of it. And then the longer term benefit is that that person will remember that connection you made or that thing you did for them. So I hope that you can find something for that pharma connection in New York that will help them make a connection in your network.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And you're right. I would say this is a great way. What you had just mentioned about helping people is a great way to reframe networking from
Mm,
perhaps an older or a less positive viewpoint. Go to these events or join these events, virtually or in person, with the idea that your information, your expertise, your knowledge, your connections. Not only are you looking to build upon them, but they could potentially be very helpful to someone. And not only do I enjoy going to in-person events, because sometimes I just like to see new venues. So my goal is like, oh, I get to go to this new place and see this really interesting place,
mhm.
and on top of that, I might meet some new people, learn about some new companies. But if I have the chance to help someone, that is, that's such a dopamine rush, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. People will remember, and you will start to become known as almost,
Mhm.
I don't know what the business term is, but almost like a maven, where
Yeah,
you are a source of information and connections, and
definitely.
that can be a very powerful tool, not just for yourself, but your immediate network as well. And I mean, just unlimited potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cheat code is if you can combine a few of these activities into one, if you can volunteer, you become a chairperson or something with a title, and these titles are easy to come by. Let me just tell you, these volunteer organizations are handing out titles because they need people to come and volunteer some time. And it's not a huge time commitment. It is a time commitment, but it's not terrible. And then that can go onto your LinkedIn because it is a legitimate thing you're doing. I still have that I was, chair of this committee on women in bio, and I still get people who reach out to me about women in bio. And I happily then make connections for them to the appropriate people at Women in Bio, even though I live too far away to still fulfill that chair role. And so if you can get involved, you come from a place of service And then you are now an expert. So you have a reason, you have a title, you have a reason to be continuing to make connections, and people will start to see you as that connection, that matchmaker for connections professionally. I love that.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, this can happen at any stage of your career, even if
Yes.
you're just beginning.
Mhm.
I don't want anyone to think that this is a time or a function of being older or having a long standing career or mid
Not
career.
at
This can
all.
happen early career as well. I would say probably even easier early career, as you've been online and have had a social media presence. Well, maybe not your entire life, but close to it. So definitely leverage that. And I was going to say, don't be afraid to use other platforms. We've been talking about LinkedIn,
Mhm.
but Twitter or X or Instagram or other platforms you feel have a good professional space that you can be in. You can also leverage there. And I wanted to mention one other. Function of or for networking that maybe an early career or someone who is looking to switch or make a pivot is also to reach out people for an informational interview. This is especially, important when you're just starting out, where you'd like to learn more about a particular job function or a career path or a company, but maybe don't know anybody in that space. So you can use your network, or you could reach out, via a professional group and say, I see that you're in this company. I see that you're in this role. I really like to learn more about it. Do you mind spending 5 minutes with me, and so I can ask some questions about it? And if you do it in a very very polite way, and making sure you're keeping cognizant of their time and energy. This can be a great way to not only expand your network a little bit, but learn more about particular career paths that you're interested in.
Yeah. I'd say you can also be kind of sneaky about how you ask for these. A lot of the time, if you ask for an informational interview, that kind of puts people off because they think it's a big time commitment, even if it's only 5 minutes you're really asking for. But what I find is really useful is asking if they have any resources. Say, I'm really interested in this career path or your company or whatever. Do you have any resources, or is there anyone in your network that would have availability to speak with me for 5 minutes? Often they'll say, "Oh, I'll speak with you for 5 minutes." But that way, it's not quite as heavy of an ask at the beginning. It's more that you're trying to gather all the information. And sometimes instead of an interview with them or a chat with them, they do have a great resource, especially at bigger companies. They often have really good resources that come out of their, internal, what do you call it, the PR function at these bigger companies. So you may be able to get your hands on some really cool information that you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't ask.
Very true. Very true. And that's a good way. Sometimes, that first that messaging is really important in the
It
beginning.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. People
Uh,
are busy.
yeah, people are busy, and I guess it also highlights, the importance of networking etiquette, if we can call it that.
Yeah.
And definitely when you're reaching out, no matter who it is, and no matter where you are in your career, is to really be respectful of other people's
Mhm.
time, and be genuine. I mean, I know sometimes it's difficult when you're really looking. For your next step in your career, that you're quite eager and things can seem very intense, but come across as genuine and open. And certainly, when people meeting someone in person, or maybe in a virtual event, or even as you're communicating back and forth, a good rule of thumb is just listen more than you speak.
Mm.
And Of course, if somebody's asking more details, provide them the honest feedback. But definitely, don't be caught monologuing. And this comes with a little practice. And we definitely have some resources to help people to craft some really important statements, or ways to summarize who you are, without monologuing. But This is an important part of building those connections, being seen as not only someone who's reaching out, but being a good listener, and show that genuine interest in the different kinds of areas that different kinds of roles that you might be exploring. And I'd like to extend that a little bit too when you're networking is to look at people in different functions. I'll use a very common example that we come across is we have people, in the R&D function and scientists and looking for perhaps their next step as a scientist role. It's important to have a diverse network. And what I mean is not only, demographically or geographically, things of that nature, but reach out to people in business development. Sales reps, or maybe field engineers, people that are working out there. They have a wealth of information. They have shared interests, just like you, though the job function of the department might be a little bit different. This is a great way to reach out to people who are doing similar work, but just a slightly different function. And again, having that diverse network just makes it stronger all around.
I'd like to tie this back to our introvert extrovert talk at the beginning. I think that's a great point. And also because a lot of folks in those functions that are that external, yeah, I'm imagining that field application scientist who happily gets in their car and drives to 10 different labs and speaks to 100 people a day. They are typically, people who are drawn to those jobs are typically more extroverted. And they also typically have a pretty broad network. And so they are happy to chat. They're usually the first to volunteer their time to tell you about their company, their function, things like that. And they're also connection builders by trade. So I love that. That's great advice. And we happen to know and love a bunch of sales and field application folks. And they always have great recommendations for new jobs that we have to hire for.
Absolutely. And they're always meeting someone and they have great stories.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been amazing. We need to wrap up a couple minutes early because I have a podcast I have to go film for Recruitomics. I'm back to back today. But this was great because I think it gave people a little bit of a baseline for some things that they can do to make networking easier, we hope. But I think the ultimate advice that we can give is if you're not yet in our free Slack community, come into it because it's a bunch of people who are also looking for jobs and they're exploring careers in biotech, even if they're not actively looking. And you get to ask questions to the great recruiting team from Recruitomics, including Daniela, about your challenges and trials and tribulations through your job search. So jump in there. We'd love to have you. It's totally free. Yeah, we'll see you there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daniela.
You're very welcome. I look forward to seeing everybody there.
Awesome. Well, have a great day, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.